I walked away from my pregnancy feeling really unfulfilled, unheard, unseen, not respected at all. I couldn't look at my scar for 18 months. And I made a decision then and there that I didn't want any other woman to feel the way that I did.
What are some things that women can do in that postpartum period to make sure that they're really prioritising themselves? Welcome back to Wildly Empowered Women. Today I have Lucy Denny with me, who is a beautiful birth keeper, postpartum doula, and helps women create a soulful income.
My job is to just hold space for the mother and the family and nurture them and love them and make sure that they feel heard. They get to experience a birth on their terms.
How do you help women make an empowering decision about the birth that they want to aim for when you're working with them? Welcome back to Wildly Empowered Women. Today I have Lucy Denny with me, who is a beautiful birth keeper, postpartum doula, and she helps women create a soulful income. She has a business called Aura and Soul Holistic Doula Services, and she supports women to birth fearlessly in their power. We have had so many empowering conversations about birth and motherhood and pregnancy and postpartum, and she's someone that I've wanted to have on the podcast for quite some time, because these are the topics that, if I was in the listener's shoes and I, was listening to an incredible doula, I would want to know from her, how can I have the most empowering experience when it comes to my birth and postpartum? So Lucy is definitely the woman for that. So thank you so much for joining today, Lucy.
Well, thank you so much, Josie. It's such an honor. You know what I think of you. So even to be invited onto the Wildly Empowered Women podcast is like a tick for me. I feel like I've reached something real good in my career.
It's funny you say that, because literally I was getting ready for this podcast and I was like, this feels like a bit of a career/life highlight for me as well, because I've always wanted 3 kids. I love motherhood. I love talking about this topic, and now I can talk from an experience point of view, and you can talk obviously from experience being a mum and also from your doula point of view, to bring a conversation that is just so sacred, such a sacred time of your life, such a vulnerable time of your life when you're becoming a mum, and something that, let's dive in. It's such a beautiful topic. So first off, tell us your background. How did you become a doula? How did it all come about?
Yeah, so not many people know that my husband and I took the scenic route, to parenthood. So we are IVF parents. We're very seasoned in it. We had 8 rounds of IVF before we fell pregnant with Reggie. And I know how you feel, because you are also an IVF mum for your first baby, is that correct?
Yeah, first. And then I tried with Freddie and it just got too much. So we ended up going down the natural route and fell pregnant that way. But after, again, very seasoned.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm an IVF mum. I am a completely different person to who I was when I was on that journey and on that path. So we started, I was really naive at the beginning. I always thought, I'm going to stop the pill. I've been on the pill for 15 years. I had post-pill PCOS. So I obviously I'd suppressed my hormones for so long that it was like going through puberty again. So I hadn't actually had a normal period or a period at all, because it was just the sugar pill for 15 years. So when you actually think about that, I had all these eggs, all these cysts on my ovaries, because I hadn't released those eggs over that period of time. So I had to regulate my hormones, had to get all of that back. And way back when, I just thought I'd come off the pill, be super lucky, go off the pill 12 weeks before our wedding date, and then announce to everyone on our wedding that we're going to be pregnant. I had this beautiful, big, massive, over the top announcement in the back of my mind. Really just not right. And then we tried for about 2 years and were unsuccessful. And we did actually go down the fertility route. And when we were there and we'd gone through all our testing, the IVF specialist at the time told us that my husband and I were incompatible, that we just couldn't have babies together. That was her diagnosis. And not once was our lifestyle at the time, not once was what we were fueling our bodies with, anything like that was considered something that was a detriment for us falling pregnant. So we were told that it would cost us $18,000 to have a baby, and we weren't guaranteed to have a baby. And we walked away from that appointment really disheartened because we'd just been told that we couldn't have children together, but also because they had put a price on our baby's head pretty much. So we were lucky enough to find a fertility specialist that bulk billed. So we went down that route instead. But like I said before, it was 8 rounds 2 years later that we fell pregnant with Reggie. And during that time, we had early birth. We had an early birth, which they like to call a unviable pregnancy. So it was just the language in the space that had really kind of upset us, but also made us really strong. And also we could really do anything together, in my opinion, especially what we've been through since then as well. So that was kind of the long story, really, really compacted into how we did go down the IVF path. But the reason I did become a birth keeper and a postpartum doula is because of the way I was treated during my labour, not my pregnancy, my labour. So during my pregnancy, I was having this constant argument with my husband that I wanted to have a home birth to the day that we went into labour. And I really needed to obviously consider his feelings because it takes two to tango. He was his baby as well. And after all the journey that we had been through to get there, I did have to consider his feelings. Hindsight, wonderful thing. You don't have to consider his feelings. It's your baby, it's your body, it's your birth. And he gets to witness you. And what an honour it is to witness you birth your baby. But learning curve. But during my labour, long story short, I ended up having an emergency cesarean 12 hours after I was told I needed to have an emergency cesarean. When the obstetrician was stitching me up after I had a cesarean, he didn't know my name. He was already talking to me about having to go on contraceptive pill, so we couldn't fall pregnant again, even though he hadn't actually. If you read my file, he would know all of these things, that I was an IVF mum, that I had post-pill PCOS, all of the things. So I walked away from there really feeling unheard, unseen, not respected at all, and just really disheartened. I couldn't look at my scar for 18 months after I had my little boy. I was just on a mission to prove everybody wrong, and to prove everybody wrong, I needed to ace my breastfeeding journey because that's all I had left, and also show everyone that I could do absolutely everything, no matter what, in my postpartum period, which is just nothing that I preach now. So, I walked away from my pregnancy, my labour, feeling really unfulfilled, and I made a decision then and there that I didn't want any other woman to feel the way that I did. And that's how I stepped into the realm of birthwork.
That is so beautiful and moving that your experience led you there. What an incredible background to lead you to that. Like, nothing really makes someone more passionate than experiencing the opposite and then just being so passionate to bring others a different experience. I love that so much. You might be able to hear little Zara in the background because I am breastfeeding her at the moment. Great episode for it. Feel like I can definitely get away with it this episode. So yeah, exactly. So thank you for sharing how you got into this line of work. I love every single post that you do on, pregnancy and birth and postpartum on Instagram. We'll definitely share Lucy's Instagram later in the episode. But let's talk a little bit about how you actually empower women in these areas. So first off, you spoke a lot about choice, like you didn't know, the choices and you weren't really empowered in your experience. How do you help women make an empowering decision about the birth that they want to aim for when you're working with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with women and their partners and their families. I make it a really unique experience. So I make it my mission to make them feel safe, but also make sure that they have access to all the information so they are able to make an informed decision. There is no right or wrong in the birth world. It's as long as you feel empowered and you feel like you have made the choice yourself. So there is, with doulas and birth workers, a lot of partners think that you replace them in the birth space, and it's not that at all. What we want is for you to feel, to walk away and feel like you have birthed your baby on your terms. And it's such a hard thing to achieve these days if you aren't educated. And that's not your fault. It's because it's the system's fault. And you need to work with the system if you want to birth in a hospital setting to achieve that. And that's where I come in. So that's where I make sure you know the hospital policies. I make sure you know all the evidence, not just what they tell you. You need to know all the pros and cons for you to make an informed decision. And knowledge is power in the birth space. If you actually know what you are looking for and what you want, like actually sitting down and somebody asking you, how do you want to birth this baby? Do you want to have pain relief? Do you want to birth at home? Where do you feel safest? Because where you feel safest is where you will have the most fulfilling birth. And some people are just not asked that. When you pee on a stick, most of the time, you are going to a GP, they're giving you a referral. They don't specialise in birth. They don't specialise in maternal care or women-led care at all. And you just kind of get like palmed off to the hospital and not knowing your options in the hospital. So not knowing that you could be on the MGP and have that continuity of care through the hospital system, which is paid for by Medicare. Knowing that you can have a private midwife and still birth in a hospital if that's what you want to get that continuity of care. There's so many things and so many options that people don't know about, women and men. They just think, oh, well, people have babies all the time. Like, they're not. We know what we're doing. We'll just follow this process, and not ever being asked what they want. And we don't want that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, especially I went through IVF and I was told that I had to be induced on the day that I was due. And I was like, oh, well, that's just the way that it is. And so I was induced with Theo, my eldest son. And so many complications came from being induced. And, that's not to say that if you've chosen to be induced, like, just be educated, as Lucy said. Be educated on all of your choices and also all of the, the things that can lead up to that experience as well. So had I have known that actually I had a choice whether to get induced, I wouldn't have. But I felt like I was told there is no choice. You have to be induced, and that's just the way that it is because you did IVF. So when it comes to choices, like when you're speaking to, someone that comes to you, wants to work with you, they're pregnant, they're starting to think about their birth, what are the choices that you feel are maybe like the top 2 or 3 that they should, go away and actually think about to have a really empowering birth and know what they're actually able to choose from?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So what the top 2, in my opinion, are knowing where you want to birth and knowing your options in the local area. A good doula, a good birth worker knows all of that for you so they can provide that information. And the second thing is knowing how you want to birth your baby and who you want in your birth team. So 3, really. You don't want anyone in your birth space that is negative, doesn't appreciate doesn't respect your choices, and also brings fear into the birth space. Because if they bring fear into the birth space, you start to question what you want. And what that actually does is they kind of taint what you want from it and how you want to experience birth, because every birth is different and their birth could have been 30, for example, your mum had a birth back in the 90s or, 80s or 90s. It was very different back then. It was very different back then. Most of them were cesareans or they think that the obstetricians know best when technically obstetricians don't specialise in birth. They specialise in surgery and midwives specialise in birth. So it's just knowing. You need to know these things, because if you know these things, you start to ask the questions. And once you ask the questions, you find the answers that you need.
I love that. So before we go further, I actually would love to get an explanation from you on what is a doula and a birth keeper, in case anyone's listening and they're like, I love the sound of a doula, but I've never actually had one, because that actually was me. Before this birth, I've had 2 kids without a doula, and then my third I had a doula. and I didn't know what one was. So what does a doula do in the whole process of working with a client?
Yeah. So with a doula, so we're an unmedicated professional that specialises in birth. We work alongside you as a family unit throughout pregnancy, your birth and your postpartum, and hold that space for you. We advocate for you if we need to, but ultimately we just want to sit back and make sure that you have that beautiful birth that you want, and then you get to experience. And it's like, I can't even put into words what it feels like to watch babies be born. It's like the best job in the whole entire world. Best job. And then during postpartum, I'm also a postpartum doula who is studying to be an Ayurvedic postpartum doula at the moment. So I'm bringing that tradition in as well. And it is just, my focus is on nurturing the mother and mothering the mother, because you are often forgotten about. Everyone is so worried about and so excited to meet this beautiful baby that you have grown, and they forget about you, and they forget that you have gone through all of this sacred rite of passage, really. The hormone influx, you just need to be loved and held, and we need to focus on you as a mother, because if you are coming from coming from a place, that is like a cup half full, everything is affected. Everything is affected. Like, I can count on one hand. I had this conversation with somebody the other day. I'm a doula. I'm a postpartum doula, and I can count on one hand how many times I have held a newborn baby in the 4th trimester. One hand. And that just kind of puts into perspective what's expected of you as a brand new mother when you're having visitors enter your space, enter your sacred space, and that bonding with your newborn is just, it becomes affected when people are coming in there, waking up your newborn, wanting to hold your newborn, not respecting your choices and your boundaries, and, covered in fragrance. Don't even get me started on that. Like, it's just, yeah. So my job is to just hold space for the mother and the family and nurture them and love them and make sure that they feel heard and make sure that they're educated and make sure that they get to experience a birth on their terms, no matter how you birth your baby.
Yeah. That is the conversation I want to get across, is this is about the mum. The baby is going to be so nurtured and loved. Like, as long as they are actually getting love, which of course they are. I'm cuddling Zara right now. When you've got a newborn, you're so bloody obsessed with them. You watch them sleep, you're cuddling them all the time. It's like, actually, who's cuddling and looking after the mum? Like, who's the one that's actually taking care? The mum has just done the most challenging physical thing that she'll ever go through in her entire life. Mentally, she's a different person. She's literally been rebirthed into a completely different identity that she'll never get back, her old self. Even each child, like, you come back a different person. I've just had a good 2-3 months off work, and then sort of came back, in inverted commas, like I guess being available in my business. And it's funny, a few people have been like, oh, Jay-Z's back. And I'm like, who was Jay-Z? Like, I genuinely was like, who was I before I left? It's like, because whoever you think is coming back, I don't recognize her. I don't know who that was, because I'm a different person once again. Like, I actually feel like I've softened so much, and also at the same time somehow have much stronger boundaries and much clearer understanding of what I want to build in my business and what I am available for, even though I felt like I had that before, so it's such an incredibly vulnerable yet powerful and empowering period. No wonder you adore what you do, because it's just absolutely incredible to witness and to experience what you go through when you have a child.
Absolutely. Like, that's just, I feel like you wrapped it up so well. Like, it's such a sacred window. And when you become a mother, each time you are reborn as a person, your values change, your friendship groups change. You as a person just grow like, just so much. It's like, it's so much growth. And, my job is to set women up for the most beautiful postpartum period. I want to make sure that you are fed. Like, another thing that I love to do is to set up meal trains for my friends and meal trains for my women that I support. And it's just, it changes. That should be the standard. Like, I feel like that just sums it up. It should be the standard. Mm. And yeah, I love it so much. You're right. I love it so much. And it's my soul work. And I am so lucky that I get to do this for work. I pinch myself every day that I get to support women in such a beautiful way. And like, it's like women have difficulty asking for help when they need it. And they feel like a burden in modern day postpartum. And most of them are on a mission to prove everybody wrong, because we're in such a fast-paced society that we are always on the go. We are always on the go. And to sit back, relax, and actually sit and surrender to this sacred period that's really hard to do. It's really hard to do by yourself when you don't have a village around you that are willing to support you in your family, but your friends as well. And it's not just, people birth every day, women birth every day, and it's just, they forget about it. People forget what you've been through, and they just get back on with their lives when, like we were just saying, it's such a sacred rite of passage for every woman, and it deserves to be honored, and it deserves to be celebrated.
Absolutely. I was almost in tears with you saying that, because even for me, like, you creating that food train was one of the most beautiful things I've ever received. It was so beautiful to receive that with Zara, and receiving food when you're a new mum is the most valuable, beautiful gift you could ever give a new mum. Like, they are not looking after their own needs first. They're focusing on their baby. When someone shifts that and goes, you know what, hun, like, you need to nurture your own body. You need to eat properly. Here's some home-cooked meals. And someone's organised a food train. Holy dooly, that was hard for me to receive from you and from everyone. Like, it actually really was. And it was such a good test for me to be like, wow, firstly, that has even been organised, the meal train. And secondly, all these people are like dropping off beautiful home-cooked meals or organising these amazing home-cooked meals so that you can actually just look after yourself. It's not what we're learned, like, we're not taught to, receive that. In fact, as women, like you said, even not just in childbirth, in life, we are so conditioned. And I've been like this as well, to be like, well, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I can't do it all. Doesn't mean I can't earn money and have kids and do it all, right? And also it sometimes, especially when you become a mum, it does turn into like kind of like a little bit of pride, like not feeling like you can ask for help, or people pleasing. So when people are trying to, visit you in the postpartum period when really you just want to rest and not actually see anyone, or when you want to have a birth a certain way and you feel like actually, you need to allow someone else to be there or someone else's opinion. It's like there's so many challenging things when it comes to the postpartum period that really, really challenge you to sit with, what do you want and are you willing to actually put yourself first? Because if you're okay and you look after yourself, your baby's okay. If you're not okay, that is actually the part in postpartum of looking after your baby is actually looking after yourself first, because they're feeding off you. They're literally feeding off your energy. They're literally feeding off what is in your body through your breast. So I truly believe, like there's an energetic exchange there too on like, if you're not looking after yourself, which as I said, I found this time around with Zara, obviously having 2 other kids, it was really challenging for me to like go, actually, I'm going to have my 6 weeks of not seeing people, of doing as little as possible, of not doing drop off and pick up, of, allowing that beautiful, beautiful meal train to like, really support us as a family. Like it took a lot. And also my message around it is it's the most necessary thing when it comes to birth and postpartum, is actually doing that. Yeah. Sorry, we've both got so much cute baby and kid noise in the background there. But yeah, so what have you witnessed, I guess, in all of the beautiful births that you've done and all of the women that you've worked with postpartum? What have you witnessed that has really led to them softening and accepting and having a really powerful fourth trimester?
Oh, I feel like what really drops into me is taking your power back. It is something that is really, how do I word this without offending anyone? It's just really, it's just, oh man, okay, it's just really hard. Like I said before, the maternity system is broken. We're getting better. We are getting better, but it's a long road. We are about 15 years behind all of the beautiful new evidence that is mother-centered. It was going to make, it's about a 15-year turnaround for that to actually be introduced into hospitals within Australia. And in that space, a lot of people that are making decisions are men, and men do not experience this. They do not journey through this process. They do not come out a different human. They do not consider any of this when making any decisions. And every hospital is actually a different business.
Yeah.
So every hospital has a different policies in place, and most of them are to cover their asses so they don't get sued with insurance. Yeah. So that is where a lot of it comes from. So a lot of women, I feel, that are actually deciding that they want to be supported by a doula or a birth worker or whatever you like to call yourself during pregnancy, unfortunately, is usually subsequent births, and that is usually after they have had a traumatic birth experience or traumatic pregnancy. And that breaks my heart because it shouldn't be like that. And for you to go out and seek something different because you don't want to feel the way you did in your last pregnancy, it's a lot of stuff to work with. There's a lot of trauma there. And with that trauma comes a lot of work. There comes a lot of work during that 9 months before you birth your next baby or before you journey through birth. And it is like a women going through a growth, I guess. They're taking, like I said, taking back their power and making sure that they're birthing on their terms. So I do see a lot of birth keepers that have actually stepped away, or doulas that have stepped away from supporting women in the hospital setting, or have decided that they don't want to support women in free birth, or I just call it sovereign birth. Sovereign birth to me is however you want to birth on your terms. And as a birth keeper, a true birth keeper that is full spectrum and respects everybody's choice, supports women no matter where they decide to birth. And that's something that I'm really passionate about. Yes, I won't birth in the hospital system when I have babies again, but it is somebody else's birth. And if that's their safe place, it is your job to respect that. It is your job to work alongside them and make sure that they feel empowered when they work away from that. So, yeah, that is my biggest takeaway from the many births that I have attended, is the women want to take their birth and their power back, and they are a stepping stone in this. It's a revolution. I say I read this revolution, the way that birth is viewed by everyone in your family after you've experienced a birth like that, where you have no fear around birth, that you walk away and you're like, yep, I can do that again. I'm a fucking powerful human being. I just birthed a baby. I can do anything. That's the standard. that's the standard that I get to work with, and I fucking love it.
Before we go on, I want to ask you a super powerful question. What would it mean to you to make decisions based on your soul rather than your bank balance? Freedom to me means having true autonomy and choice in your life to live based off your values and soul's desires, rather than what you can purely afford for you and your family or what your job requires of you. This is why I've been empowering women for the past almost 5 years to earn more with pleasure, earning your true worth without the insane hustle and with actually having choice in your life. It is so much more about how you earn rather than what you earn. If you'd like to learn more about how I mentor women to earn a time-leveraged income online, selling conscious, health-based products and learning the skills of personal branding and attraction marketing, both very sexy skills to have, then click on the link in the show notes or DM me the word info on Instagram so we can have a proper chat. I love having one-on-one convos with you savvy queens and showing you how this kind of income and our community can help you truly live wildly empowered. Big love, back to the episode. Yep. I love that message so much. It is the most empowering thing, birthing a baby. And I agree with you. It doesn't matter how. It's the fact that you have not only birthed, you've literally grown a child for almost 10 months in your body, from your body, and then you're birthing it and continuing to grow it from your body. Like, it blows my mind. It actually blows my mind it's so mind-blowing when you think about it. And it also leads back to my next question about postpartum on why it's so important for us to actually, look at that fourth trimester with as much importance as the pregnancy. Because an interesting thing, like, I sort of guess I had a bit of an epiphany this time, because I feel like in pregnancy there's so much support and there's so much spotlight on you. Right? When you're pregnant, people will stand up and give you their seat, and you have all these appointments, and every 2 weeks you're seeing a different, midwife or doctor or whatever. And people are asking you how you're feeling and, can I get you something? Can I get you a glass of water? Like, they're all sort of really looking after you. And then when the baby comes, it's almost like they forget that you've just had a baby. Like, your body has literally just done this hugely physical, difficult thing. And then the focus is suddenly on the baby, and no one's asking, like, can I get you a cup of tea or like a water or whatever? They just want to come over and they want to be waited on instead of waiting on you. So what are some things that women can do in that postpartum period to make sure that they're really prioritizing themselves?
I actually, it's going to make me laugh. I actually did a post a few months ago, and it's actually titled "How Not to Be an Arsehole When Visiting New Mums and Families."
I really wanted to share that. That was such a good post.
I know. So what I would say is, first of all, setting your boundaries. Boundaries, very Aussie of me. Boundaries. So just making sure that you're not people pleasing. This is your space. This is your baby. You just birthed this baby and it's your home that they're coming to. So first of all, set the boundaries and do it unapologetically. Secondly, respect your values. So you have values. People have different values. My values, for me, if I had just had a newborn, this is how I would actually message my friends, my family, anything like that. I feel like this is probably the best way to do it. So I would say 1 hour cap. You have a 1 hour cap and that's it. Bring food. If you're not bringing food, please do not come. My baby doesn't need anything. We need something. If the dishwasher needs to be unstacked or if the washing needs to be hung out, I will ask you to do it. So please respect that. Like, you're coming into my space. I'm letting you visit my baby. I would really appreciate the help. You're not holding my baby. If my baby is asleep, you are not waking them up. Not to wear fragrance, not to wear any toxic chemicals, nothing. And if you are wearing them, I will actually ask you to have a shower. And to top it off, it will be in a Nespa, like a Nespa shower. So you'll be like, beautiful. It'll be so good. And then I also, don't apologize for what you want. Do not apologize for what you want. it's actually really disrespectful of them to come into your home and to expect something different.
Yeah.
So I just feel like just setting your boundaries and really being really clear about what you are okay with and what you're not okay with. And if they have a hissy fit, or if they are expecting you to wait on them, or if they are an asshole, just let them know, like, that's just a reflection of them, right? It's not a reflection of you.
Yeah, exactly. I really made a point of just saying with people, I'm like, I'm just really in my bubble for 6 weeks. You know, I can't wait to catch up with you after that, but I'm really just in my bubble right now. And we're just really finding our flow as a family. So I was sort of, I didn't even, like, I was sort of implying we're not even available for visits, you know? And that felt really good for me, because then if I wanted to actually see someone, I could message them and be like, hey, I'm actually feeling okay to have a visit. And then I'd say those things that you've said, like, if you do feel like coming over, then, you know, boom, 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 these are the things that, like, I'd love you to, you know, bring food if that's available, like, to, you know, let's sit outside for an hour and get some sun, because I was doing that at the time. I was just like an hour a day crawling out of bed and getting sunshine, like things like that. It felt really good to do that. So I think that's a really good checklist. Maybe we can put the link to that actual post that you did in the show notes, because it was such a good guide to what to ask your visitors for, basically, when they come. Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely. I think I also just wanted to touch base after you've said that as well. Like, the first 42, there's a beautiful quote. I don't remember who actually said it, but it's just off the top of my head. And it's like, the first 42 years post-birth that you set the standard for the first 42 years after birth. And we are so disconnected from, like, traditional cultures, which have implemented and honoured an extended period of rest postpartum. We're so disconnected from that. We're disconnected from the traditions of our ancestors. And that's, like you said, that 6 weeks of bubble, that 6 weeks of you having such intentional connection with your newborn and really getting to know them, really getting to fall in love with them. Like, I feel like I come back to my story postpartum is, I remember the day I fell in love with Reggie. I know I loved him, but I did not fall in love with Reggie. And I think he was about 8 weeks old, because I did not honor that connection with him, because I was on a mission to prove, like I said before, to prove everybody wrong, that I could be a good mother, that I could be a good breastfeeding mother, which is so silly, because I look at it now and it's such an energetic exchange, like we were talking about before, your breastfeeding journey. But a fed baby is good, no matter how they're fed.
Yeah.
And for me at the time, if I wasn't able to feed Reggie, I feel like I would have failed in all aspects as a woman. And it's such a good thing to able to talk about it. Like, my healing process is actually talking about these things. And I talk about it because there's women out there that feel that they're alone and no one has ever felt the way that they have felt. But I have. And if you need somebody to talk to, drop into my DMs. I will give you the time. I will give you the space, and I will make sure that you know that you're not alone, because it is a healing process. But to heal and to honor and to make sure that you are, respecting that postpartum journey for your next birth and subsequent births after that, or even now. Like, postpartum is forever. You might have a 5-year-old and you might hold on to this. And you can still do this now. You can implement these things now. It's you growing as a person and your beliefs and your beliefs changing, your values changing. Like, there's never a perfect time. Like, postpartum is forever. And, I've had so many beautiful conversations with my mum, and her last birth was 21 years ago, and she's starting to implement these things now. So, yeah, I just wanted to say.
Yeah, the first 40 days, the book, The First 40 Days, is such a beautiful overview of those amazing, what did you say? Like, all of the old cultures that we can learn from and all of the customs at post-birth. That book is just like my Bible when it comes to postpartum. I read it. I wish I had have known about it for my first child, but I read it for my second and third and implemented it for each one. And there is just so much to learn from like Chinese herbal medicine, for example, there's so much of that in that book. And, the foods that really nourish you and why, like they do a really great explanation of why you should eat certain things or drink certain things. But one of the things that I really loved from the first 40 days, and, we know that nourishment and food and rest and all of that is really important, but this is one thing I really implemented that I think this day and age is really important as well, is that book shares that it's a Chinese tradition that for the first 6 weeks, the mother doesn't even have books on her bedside table, like no books, no screens, no nothing, because it's too tempting to be entertained, right? And that was something that really stood out for me this time. And my God, was it a stretch for me? Like it really was like not what I'm used to not be, like actually being entertained or feeling productive by being on my phone or even just watching TV or reading a book or whatever. The only book that I would refer to was the first 40 days. And I intentionally did not pick up my phone while I was breastfeeding. So I would just be present in the moment. And also at night, like, I had a light on just outside the room. I actually slept down in the pool room, so away from my husband, so we could have some space and just time together. And yeah, I didn't even look at my phone when I was waking up at nights, which I've never been so strict on myself with screen time, but man, did it help. Like you just have such a clearer mind and you really are in that bubble when you just reduce distractions and reduce the obligation to get back to people or to like write back to messages or emails or this or that. Like I was just like, no one's going to judge me for not getting back to them when I've just had a newborn. And if they do, I've just had a newborn, have some realistic expectations here. So I think that is a really good point as well, because we do talk a lot about food and rest, and those are the sorts of things that you would expect for postpartum, but also your mind is a really important part of it as well.
Absolutely. And like when you think about it, like when our parents had babies, that wasn't even something that we had to consider.
Yeah.
It is only I got my first iPhone when I was in year 12, when I'm 30. Like how much has everything changed in 15 years? In 15 years, and this is what we're looking at, and people are so distracted and worried about what's happening in somebody else's life as opposed to theirs. And they have this beautiful miracle right in front of them that they are jeopardizing that connection with because they're more worried about what the Kardashians are doing. That's beautiful, Jess. I'm so glad you shared that because, it's probably one of my biggest takeaways as well. It's just being present and in the moment. And, it's when you're staring down the barrel of going back to a 9-to-5 job 12 months in and you've been looking at your phone the whole time. All the things that you forgot about, all the things that you missed, and you don't realize you've even missed them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quieting the mind so that you can actually prioritize, not only the moment, but what you need. Like, are you listening to your body? So for me, I was like, I am not looking at my phone for the reason of, being present, but also because I was like, I want to be able to sleep whenever I possibly can, in the first 6 weeks. And if you're jacked up on social media or screen time, like think about if you do that before bed, how easy is it to get to sleep? Not that easy, right? Because you've been scrolling and you've got that, blue light and that sort of, it's almost like, being jacked up on social media is like having a coffee for your mind. So then it's harder to actually relax and get into a more, softer state to go to sleep or to properly rest. So that was another reason why I did it, because I was like, okay, it's 9 a.m. and I want to have a sleep. If I have been on my phone scrolling or something, I'm going to find it really hard to get to sleep. But if I haven't been and I've just been with the kids and baby land and stuff, it's going to be a lot easier. So it's challenging, but I would really challenge anyone to do that and really actually go, okay, how much can I get off my phone to make sure, especially at night, to make sure that I can actually get proper rest. Yeah. So you are such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to birth and postpartum, and just have so many beautiful things to teach us in that realm. So I would definitely recommend go and follow Lucy on Instagram, and her Instagram is in the show notes now. What is it about empowering women that you really love after the fourth trimester? So we've sort of spoken birth, fourth trimester, and then, what's beyond that?
I feel like this is where I would probably talk about my online business. So I have been a part of the Wildly Empowered Collective alongside Jess since November last year. And the reason I said yes to this business is because I wanted to prioritize my family time, definitely practice what I preach, but also not sacrifice an income for the work that I love to do. And I love to empower women through every journey of their life. And one of the things I am most passionate about besides that, or one of my other big passions, is making sure women know that there is another way, and that going back to work after you've had a child, after you've had a baby, is not the only option.
I love that. It's so important, isn't it? And I think that that's the really big part of after the fourth trimester, we go, okay, we can sort of see the forest from the trees. Like there's a bigger picture and a bigger world out there. It's such a, it's such a slow progression sometimes to even get there, to go, what's life going to look like now on the other side? And then work comes and you go, wow, okay, I haven't worked for 12 months. And I remember feeling that after Teo, like I hadn't worked for 12 months, and I was like, I don't even remember what I did in my job. I don't remember how to do it. I feel like a bit of a dinosaur. I feel really nervous about going back to work. I feel like I had such low confidence going back into the industry that I was in. So it's so important. I agree with you, like for women to know that it's not the only way. You don't have to just go back to work, especially this day and age. My God, there's so many different online things that you can do for income. Like there really is. And I feel like, the way that we earn money and the way that we do it with time leverage and it being high ticket is so important, because I actually, with my first, did try and replace my income and it didn't work. It just wasn't enough. Like it's got to be something that is going to be time leverage and is going to be enough to actually replace your income, because a lot of things out there are great, but it's kind of like hobby money, or like it's a little side hustle. It's not actually really enough to support you and your family in that time. So yeah, I love that. What else, who are the type of women that you work with in your online business? What is it that they're seeking, and what is it that they're starting to experience now working with you?
Yeah, so I actually have this vision, and I feel like this is the perfect place to start when I'm trying to answer this question. So I have this vision of this beautiful village of women that are changing the narrative, paving the way for their children, showing their children that there is another way, creating an abundance of soulful money that lights your heart on fire, that makes you happy, that brings you joy, that gives you time with your family and the people that you love most. But most of all, allows you to spend every second with your child if you want to. And as you know, and as everyone would know now, that family is such a massive thing in my life, and it's my priority. It is my why, and it is the fuel to my fire, because I want my children to know who I am, what I love, what I do, what makes me happy, what my favorite color is, what my favorite food is, and I want to know the exact same thing about them. And if that's all I get in life, like the money really doesn't matter for me. Obviously, money is a tool. It gets the life that I want, but that's a bonus. The true gift in this type of business is the family unit that I create, the connection that I create, and the village that I create around me with their women and their families as well. And that's what it means to me, this business.
That's so beautiful.
And they're the women that I'm working with. And it's such an honor to work alongside these women. They found me. This business is actually rooted in sisterhood. And I did not know how much I needed that until I needed that. And now I'm creating this beautiful community around me that are all local, which blows my mind. All the women that I have attracted are where I am. And we're having sister circles every month. And we are talking about the moon phases, and we're really like-minded. And they found me, and I get to help them.
Attraction marketing, baby. How good is it? You just attract the most beautiful women that feel so incredibly empowering to help. It just lights you up so much when you attract someone similar to you and you're like, I know your life, I know your pain, I know your challenge, and I know how I can help you. It's so beautiful. And you really have attracted some gorgeous women to work with. So massive hats off to you, babes. The women that are going to really change the narrative. And like we were saying before, it's like this new revolution of not only what motherhood gets to look like in terms of our choices and the birth and the postpartum period, but also what motherhood gets to look like in terms of work and career. Yes, you can have them both and burn the bra, let women work, all of that. That's great. But it becomes a bit of an issue, really, if the expectation is that we see women need to do it all. It's getting to have it all is one thing, needing to do it all, keep, all the things that you want to keep going in your home in terms of cooking and cleaning and schedules with kids and sports and all of that, and also have a career and also be a present mum. So I agree with you. It's not necessarily the money. Yes, we're helping you earn an income, of course, but it's actually the how you earn the income so that you can do that without all of these expectations of you only can earn money and have a career if you go to a 9-to-5, or you only can earn a 6-figure income if you're out of the house 5 days a week and maybe even working weekends as well. Because who really earns 100K and only does 9-to-5? Usually there's still spillover into the rest of your life from that type of work. So that's awesome. Anything that I haven't asked you that you want to share in terms of empowering women with their choices or anything that we've spoken about today?
No, I feel like we've covered it all. It's been such a juicy convo. I feel like we've actually all the boxes, spoke about all the things, and I feel like anyone that's listening to this will be like, oh, yeah.
Yes, I have been nodding the whole time. I love it so much. And if you just loved what Lucy shared, please do reach out to her, follow her on Instagram. There's a link to how she can help you earn an online income if that's what you want to do, or have her as a doula if you're in that period of your life, or if you know of someone that's looking for a doula. Her Instagram is _Lucy Denny. So it's in the show notes. Before we wrap up, I would love to ask you, Lucy, if you could go back to your 21-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Before we wrap up this episode, I want to ask you a question. Do you remember how you discovered this podcast? Was it a friend's suggestion or an Instagram story, maybe a post? Somehow you found it, and I'm hoping you're getting a lot of value from it. I need your help now to pay it forward so that other women can feel seen, heard, nourished, and more than anything, empowered from these conversations too. Big love, back to the episode.
I've been thinking about this all week. What would I tell her? You don't need anybody's permission to be whoever you want to be. I just want to give her a big hug and let her know that you are enough. And you don't have to ask anyone if it's okay.
That is beautiful. Yeah. Feeling that so wholeheartedly from you.
Sorry, I'm crying. Oh, I'm crying.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much, Lucy, for everything in this conversation. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, if you are listening and you got some value from it, if you loved anything that you heard, would love for you to share it, screenshot it, tag us in the screenshot on Instagram, in your stories, and just reach out to us if you want to chat through anything. Lucy's got so much amazing content on her Instagram, and if you do know of anyone that, you know, is in that phase of their life, I think, you know, this would be a really good podcast for them to listen to so that they can get prepared for that fourth trimester, because it's such an incredibly important time for any mother. So thank you so much, Lucy, for all of your wisdom, and big love to all the mamas out there. We hope that we really empowered you in this episode.
Thank you, Jay-Z.